Hey guys, OGalbina here, bringing you guys yet another Draft League discussion video. Today we have yet another one of those yearly discussions that I like to kind of partake and, see what the community's feel is. And today we're going to be asking what the most underrated Pokemon in Draft League is right now. This can be for offensive or defensive reasons, or just due to it matching up well into the metagame and being pretty anti-meta. I'd love to hear explanations too. We had a ton of responses, a ton of really cool ones. So if you guys are excited for this Draft League discussion, be sure to drop a like on the video, as well as subscribe to the channel. On our way to 5,000 subs by the end of the year, and we only got about a month. By the way, happy Halloween. I hope you all stay safe tonight, have a good time, and I appreciate you spending part of your day listening to me waffle about low tier Draft League Pokemon. But yeah, with that being said, I think we can kind of just jump right into it. First up, we have my goat Bash here saying, I would have to say Lurantis. Quite honestly, I've steamrolled too many teams with Lurantis superpower sets, and it also gets utility in defog. It's a really good low-budget grass. I would actually low-key agree. There's been a few games. I think there was a game in Gen 8, was in NCP, I forget which league, where I was playing against Sven, and he rolled me with Lurantis because I just didn't prepare for it aptly. I think it's like a fun low-tier Mickey Mon. I think with Terra in particular, if you're doing like a really low-tier Terra, it could be a cool option. I think where I struggle with Lurantis is just the low BST and how unreliable it is from that like low tier budget grass standpoint of being that ground resist. Doesn't do it super well. It can steamroll and Mickey with superpower and Leaf Storm, but really outside of that, it kind of struggles a little bit. Next up, we have Corey here saying Meloetta due to the diversity of sets. It's a bulky pivot, fast pivot, assault vest specs, tons of coverage, relic song tech, throat spray tech, and usually cheap in draft. I agree, and I think especially if you're in one of those low-tier Terra settings, I think that Meloetta is one of the best captains you could do. It's so difficult to switch into, so bulky from the special side, and incredibly, incredibly strong. And then you find that matchup where you can viably position the Relic Song set. Now again, don't force it. A lot of time people force it, but if you can reliably position that Relic Song and you only need three other moves otherwise, and you become like basically like a lesser version of Megalopony, that's difficult to switch into, especially if your opponent is prepared for a normal psychic special attacker. Now they're playing a fast, offensive, normal fighting attacker. That's really scary. So I definitely think that Meloetta Pirouette is super slept on if it can find that opportunity. And I think that like regular Meloetta itself is just a really good low tier Terra captain, especially if you're on an AV Charge Beam, right? Big shouts to Corey and his Meloetta. Next up, we have Wanzi Bennett here saying Cryogonal. Fantastic speed tier, offensive threat, especially with Terra, removal, and screens. It's just a good Mon. For similar reasons, swap out speed tier with the threat of Iron Press. Avalugg is fantastic versus a lot of the metagame. So we'll start with Cryogonal. I think, again, low tier Terra, sure. But I do think that low tier Terra is, I don't know, I feel like there's definitely better offensive options in low tier Terra. I like the idea of like having the Mon with no weaknesses and like being an electric type with Levitate and having stab bolt beam coverage. That's awesome, but we really do kind of lack the damage output. I don't agree that it's a great offensive threat. I think that the speed tier plus removal is always going to be good value as a low tier Mon. The issue I have with Cryogonal, if it is not tearing, is it very often loses to a lot of these rockers, especially steel and rock types that are setting up these rocks consistently. Yeah, you can spin them away, but can you keep them away? Are they going to just come back in? Now, you're a little bit better off against ground types, but you also really struggle with your damage output to where your Ice Beams and Freeze Dries aren't killing those ground types, right? So they can viably just kill you with a Stone Edge or a Rock Slide or Stealth Rock up again. Great Spadef pivot, good wall in that regard. I think it's a good bundle check too if your team's like super bundle weak, but I'm not super big on it. Avalugg, though, I do really like. Again, if you're playing in a low tier Terra, I feel like a lot of people like frame this as low tier Terra, which I'm not a big fan of that format in general, but if we are talking about it from that perspective, Avalugg's great. Avalugg, it's very similar to Mons like Meganium, Bastiodon, these really low-tier Pokemon that have incredible natural bulk that really appreciate having their typing switched up, especially something like Avalugg or Hisuialugg, where you can change into a ghost type, you can change into a water type, XYZ, whatever typing is best for you, fairy, whatever good defensive typing, allowing you to check whatever it is you need to defensively or become a very scary win con with Iron Press. Really obnoxious. Also gives you spin, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I think Avalugg's pretty cool as a low tier Terra captain. I actually like that guy a lot, and I kind of like approaching these low tier Terra guys if you're going like really low tier, or like say you're playing in a standard Terra format and you're allowed like 26 Terra points, 25 Terra points. You Terra your Ogerpon Wellspring but then you have that low tier defensive Terra to kind of pair alongside it. So I really like that. Except we have Bash here saying another one is Mega Pinsir. So we're talking from a Natdex perspective. I don't understand how it's always priced around 9 to 10 points. Pokemon is a certified monster, assuming return is allowed. It's such an excellent cleaner or breaker. You do not have to worry about that 4 times weakness until Mega. I think, yeah, it's really strong. One, you see a lot of leagues that like don't allow return. So in those leagues, it's definitely worth 9-10 points. It's terrible. But I agree, it's probably worth more. The issue with Pinsir and the reason why it's not drafted very often is hafting. Yes, you don't like have that 4 times weakness until you Mega, but once you do, it's pretty debilitating, right? And we have to make sure we're structuring a team that can reliably keep hazards off or remove them if they do go up. Especially considering Rocks and Seals that set up rocks are going to be the Pokemon that check Mega Pinsir. So I think that's a big downside to it. And obviously the 8 ability nerf in Gen 7 onwards is a little bit tough, but it's still really fun. It's actually a Pokemon I've always really wanted to try drafting. Sorry, I think I'm catching a little bit of a cold. Tis the season to get sick. So I apologize if I'm coughing and sniffling at all during this video. But yeah, I think Mega Pinsir is cool. It's just very hard to draft, right? It's very hard to structure it on a team where it's good. Next up, we have Big Kigo, of course, Throw, Craig. Very good defensive fighting type at an efficient price. I agree. Something like Throw, I'm personally a Hariyama guy. We're very Hariyama-pilled on the OGalbina YouTube channel. But Throw is kind of similar in that regard. I definitely prefer Harry, but I think Throw is a good backup option. Those low-tier defensive fightings are always fun. One I used to like a lot was Girder. I'm not big on Girder anymore just because I hate when my fighting type can't switch into knockoff. But similar kind of idea, right? Fat low-tier fighting type is just going to be a nice general resist to a lot of things. And with an Assault Vest, they typically blanket check a lot. Next up, we have Neonon Umbreon with a great pick in Mesprit. Usually cheaper than Uxie and provides vast utility. Fire Gloomon Metal, always go 1-for-1 or position the team to win. Great Terra Cap too. Yeah, I've seen it do incredible in low tier Terra. It's a great rocker, pivots his U-turn, T-waves things, knocks things off, has great coverage, blah, blah, blah. But it has the best move in Pokemon Draft League, Healing Wish. I'm a big Healing Wish guy, and I think Mesprit is one of the absolute best Pokemon at doing so. Absolutely love the Pokemon. I think it's absolutely incredible for a very cheap price. I think Uxie is obviously better. But considering that Uxie is considerably more expensive than Mesprit, I very often go Mesprit on my drafts. I absolutely love them on. You knock, you Future Sight, you U-turn, you T-Wave, you Healing Wave. I mean, you can do a ton. And there's always those Mickey setup sets, right? Especially with Terramons and things like that. Like Terra Electric, really, really obnoxious to deal with in a lot of instances. So, yeah, really cool. Next up, we have Hunky here saying Misdreavus. Not Mismagius, Misdreavus. If you ever have leftover points in your Terra budget, one of my favorite Pokemon draft in a certified UNPL GOAT. I have seen Missy used a good amount of times. I think there was a DPL team that L5 had a Misdreavus on, or he was playing one. So I mean, it has like value as like low tier spin blocker, Bulkymon with Eviolite. I think with Terra it could actually be pretty cool. I remember Keegan beat a King Gambit team with like a Misdreavus because it was like fast Wisp, and it was like originally not even there for that. I think it was for Ursaluna. It's just a pretty good check too, to be fair, but it ended up beating King Gambit 1v1, which is pretty funny. So yeah, I'm here for Misdreavus. It's a good low point bomb. Next up, we have J-Bear with another cool one. I've been impressed with Big Abomasnow lately. Deceptively strong stab combo, and Veil is no slouch, and the Veil is no slouch either. Solid cheap Terra Captain to complement your near max budget one. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind too with these Terra, right? I guess like at first I was like, oh, low tier Terra. It doesn't really have to be, right? We're kind of thinking about it from like high tier Terra with like a low tier, like, you know, accent partner, which is what Abomasnow would be here. And I agree wholeheartedly. Terra water sets, Terra ground sets even to get like crazy strong stab, earth power, earthquakes. Strong Veil user. Yeah, it's a cool bond. You typically see it at like 4 points. So like you get good value out of that guy. I've drafted Abomasnow even without Terra before, and I've enjoyed it pretty considerably. Next up, we have Clyde. The JJDL brain has infiltrated my Twitter mentions. Gotta be Brambleghast. Defensively is where it's most underrated. It can put top tiers like Tusk or Treads in a blender with the combination of Strength Sap and base 115 attack and win a lot of 1v1s if you EV properly. Plus, it gets a good offensive profile and spin. See, I agree that it has a good offensive profile and spin. I hate defensive Brambleghast. I think you're always one bad turn away from losing the game with it. If that is your, like, I'm never drafting a team where Brambleghast is my ground resist. I'm never drafting a team where Brambleghast is going to be my answer to something like Great Tusk or Iron Treads. it's just not going to happen. I don't think it's a good idea at all. I do like it as like a low tier offensive spinner / spin blocker, strong priority. I like the stab combination too. I mean, Power Up Poltergeist is hard to switch into. Shadow Sneak is obviously, you know, solid as well. You hit most things neutrally, so you don't really have to worry about having bad coverage, which you do. So I'm here for it in that regard. I'm not a big defensive Bramble guy, so that's why I'm going to disagree. Really not. I think it really struggles when you actually start looking at the calcs. Next up, we have Slick here saying Okidou. I think it has a place in current Gen 9 meta as a second Terra captain on teams that can catch people by surprise. I've been Okidou build. I'm glad that the streets are starting to recognize my GOAT. The best of the loyal three. I've been saying it since the beginning. People were saying the Monkey Dory was going to be a viable Pokemon. They were wrong. I think Dogi is actually really, really good. Again, just that general physically defensive bulk is really cool. I used Terra in GBU. It was like you had to pick a couple things, but it was absolutely incredible. I've seen free Terra used really well. And again, if you have that secondary option, and I really like these like solid secondary options with other Terramons that don't like need to Terra to be viable, right? I like the flexibility of, you know, teams like that, and I think Okidou is a great fit on those types of builds. And it's really strong. Its dual stab combination of fighting poison is really annoying, considering its ability in Toxic Chain. Guard Dog is also cool in Intim matchups, like say you're playing a Landorus or something. But the Toxic Chain, really, you smoke through any steel type that you know wants to switch on your fighting stat, and you have coverage for poisons in both Psychic Fangs and High Horsepower. I don't think you get Earthquake. I know you at least get High Horsepower. So obviously a really strong mon and really annoying to switch into. You might have something that switches in naturally, but it's either going to get bulked up on or it's going to get poisoned. It gets knockoff too, so an incredible knockoff user. So yeah, I'm definitely here for it. I'm a big Okidou guy. I agree with Slick here. Next up, we have Ling Electric is the true GOAT. Picked him multiple times now, and he hasn't disappointed yet. Its support move pool is just as good as the big boy, and the attack side ain't bad either. It's also bulky on the physical side too, without missing out on T-Wave. So like in the sense of you have to go like Assault Vest on your Arboliva, or on your Arboliva, what the hell? I think I'm looking down. Yeah, there's an Arboliva there in a second. But yeah, I don't know. I've seen Electric drafted a couple times. I think Kurt was playing a game recently where he played an Electric, and I was like, the great description, but then it got knocked off and CZ'd. So I don't know if I agree. I think people tunnel on the no weaknesses. But the mon's passive, it's slow, it's knock bait. So it's a bit tough in that regard. I could see you getting some value out of it at like 1 or 2 points, but I'm not going to pretend like it's good. You know what I mean? At all. Alright, next up we have Kaz here saying Stunfish. Now we're talking about low tier electrics. Now we're spitting. Low point value, pretty reliable rocker, static plus ground typing can prevent a lot of momentum from your opponent, toxic, yawn, and even discharge pairs to annoy your opponent. Foul play to prevent physical setup on mons, and pain split to keep it healthy. What I don't think we're mentioning is the best aspect of Stunfish, especially in Generation 8, was the anti-meta aspect of it. In the sense that its defensive profile checked a lot of the top tier Pokemon. 3 in particular that come immediately to mind: Tapu Koko, Zeor, and Tornti. Stunfisk puts them in a blender. Like an absolute blender. It's light, so those grass knots from the electrics do absolutely nothing. Torn obviously can't just do its usual U-turn spam pivot around unless it either forgoes boots and goes protective pads, or it's going to get parried eventually. Just going to happen, right? So I absolutely love Stunfisk in the past because of how anti-meta it was. On top of all these other things, we get up rocks, we foul play, we toxic, we spread passive damage, we T-wave or discharge things. I think the guy that it doesn't get Volt Switch is really, really unfortunate, but other than that, really solid. Next up, we have Oboe. Bramble, guys, kind of talked about it a little bit before. I think Bramble is cool. Offensively, it's awesome. Defensively, meh. Next up, we have Nick here saying, Arbl leave it easy. An elite Terra captain, a massive tank, and can support with terrain. Especially in points draft, getting him from cheap is always great. Yeah, I mean, in low tier Terra specifically, we've seen Arboliva consistently perform well in the live side scene. I think Joey's drafted it twice, and he's done really, really well with it both times, so I'm here for it. It's a good one. I haven't really ever drafted Arboliva myself, but I could see it being good in a low tier Terra format. Next up is Badass Frostless here saying Douchbun is always going to be running the exact same Wish passing set, but Fairy with a Fire immunity is just so nice into a ton of big threats. Dashbomb will never be a threat itself, but it will consistently annoy your opponent that their best mon is studying into a low tier. I've seen Dashbomb put in some work. I think the issue with Dashbomb myself is that the wishes it's passing are basically for itself. With like what, base 50 HP, you're not passing shit into anybody. I mean, unless it's another really offensive Pokemon. kind of hard to get any actual health into the rest of your team, but defensively checking a lot of offensive fightings in particular is awesome. Puts Urshifu in absolute jail, which is cool. There is like the idea of it walling Shiyu, but it doesn't really if it specs and it like clicks Psychic once, or it just keeps clicking Dark Pulse, right? Like we Dark Pulse and bait for a flinch after the first time before specs, so I don't think that's the good aspect of it, but I like it checking physically offensive fightings and physically offensive dark types, which are in like mass amounts this generation. Probably the best typing in general. Or the two best typings. I think dark is definitely the best, so I'm here for it. Next up, we have A12. Would it be a discussion video if A12 wasn't in my mentions talking about Diggersby? Diggersby, when I see Natdex Leagues price Diggersby at 10, a small part of me dies inside. Who needs to waste a turn setting up rocks with your ground when you could just Oonga Boonga hit them in the head? I agree, but to other people's points, and I guess this is what we're calling out, it is very hard role compression-wise to draft grounds that do not set up Stealth Rock. Same thing with Steel types. They have to be absolutely incredible. The Pokemon that come to mind that can kind of push past that because of how good they are Zygarde, Celesteela, and Kartana. Ground and Steel types that don't set up Stealth Rock. Diggersby is good, but it is not good enough to where on a lot of teams you can be like, it's okay if my ground doesn't rock, because Diggersby is so good. I think you like almost need to get like one of those Mesprit, Uxie, like Psychic type Stealth Rockers in order to justify that. Or just some kind of typing that doesn't. Maybe like a Draudigon or something like that, right? So I'm here for Diggersby. It's strong, it's fun, and A12 is the Diggersby Whisperer. He is incredible with it. But yeah, I'm not gonna say it's like ungodly underrated. It's still like a mid-tier breaker for a reason, you know what I mean? Next up we have Caleb Nail here saying Assault Vest Electros. Not any other Electros set. No Rocky Helmet, no Rest Boca or Rest Coil sets. No. Assault Vest. I'm here for Electros though. I think it's fun mon. Good pivot. No weakness is always cool. I think like stats are kind of creeping up to it. I think in Gen 6 and 7 it was really fun because not everything to a Kyo no code everything in the game. Now things kind of do. So I did love Eel and Low tier though, where the stats don't really matter as much. So yeah. Next up, we have Anthony here saying, kind of late to the party. I think, he is the most recent reply. But I gotta go with Beartic here. Despite not having great speed and let alone a mono ice type, this mod can clean up games with the right members, or even like Rain Setters or one of the Slow Kings. Great movable and strong offensive stat of 130. Yeah, I've also seen Terra do well. Love Terra Electric Beartic. I think Ninetales sucks is my only issue. So like, I think if you draft a Slow King on its own, you have leftover points later. Yeah, draft a Beartic, draft a Sandslash, something like that. I don't like going in and being like, I have a Lowland Ninetales plus Beartic. I think Snow Cores are bad. But I'm here for like the Slow King aspect. Next up here, we have Seahawk here saying, in the draft league I'm currently in, Flygon can run Terra Steel to pair with Levitate, run a max HP and max defense or special defense set, and take hits quite well. And has the moves to take reliable hits. Terra Normal is great with specs, has access to Boom Burst and other special moves. Yeah, I've seen Flygon do well in low tier Terra. I think outside of like low tier Terra though, specifically, it's not great. Especially the defensive aspect of it, in the sense of it losing Roost this generation. Flygon losing Recovery is a bit tough for me, and it really kind of holds me off on like those defensive Terra sets. So yeah, that's just me though. Next up, we have TytheGuy here saying, I would say Okidou. Another Dogi. People believe that everyone thinks it's overpriced at 14 or 13. In reality, it's perfectly ranked one of the best offensive and defensive fighting types of Gen 9 draft. Yeah, I'm here for it. Like I said before, I'm a big Okidou guy. Absolutely love the mon. Think it's really, really incredible. Great value and a great Terra captain. Next up, we have Biff the Banana. I'm assuming a D-Ray ult with the mon that's on the stream, on the screen. I've got to say, I think Sandaconda is the one for me. It's extremely low cost in leagues I've played in, even without Sandspit, right? Well, I think Sandspit isn't the good aspect of it. Shedskin Rest is clutch recovery that can really extend the mon's lifespan. I've used it to wall all sorts, including gouging fire. It's so solid. Yeah, I like it as low tier ground for the Shedskin aspect. Flare, Rocks, Rest, Earthquake. You could also get rid of Rest and just be like Stone Edge or something like that. You're typically just going to be Claire Rocks, 2 attacks, or a Rest, or something like that. And it does the job well. I'm here for that. I think it's aptly priced, but it's a good low tier ground if you need one. And I like Glare Spam. Glare Spam is always going to be good, right? Just making it more odds for you to move first and attack first. Hold on, we're at Puppy Pone. How much far? Well, we don't have that much further. Okay, where are we at? Alright, Puppy Pone here next. Spiritomb has great bulk and a ton of utility options and Toxic, Willow, Paint Split, and has 2 forms of priority and a great typing that is only weak to Fairy. Can use physical or special and has setup options with Nasty Plot. Easily lives, and Calm Mind. Easily lives anything with its 50, 108, 108 bulk. I think the bulk thing is catching up to it. Again, like Electros, I think Spiritomb was the go. In particular, Gen 7 Spiritomb was one of my favorite low tiers because it really puts those offensive fighting types in jail. There's offensive Megas in jail, not a lot because of Scrappy, but in particular, Mega Medicham and Mega Glade, it's one of the best low tier checks to those guys, and if you need to check to those, you see Spiritomb go all the time for those. I think you could say something similar for some of the high tier fighting types, but even like look at Great Tusk, it kind of blows through it. Look at even like a Galarian Zapdos kind of blows through it. So I think that 50 HP is catching up with it. I think if it got like 30 more HP, we could talk a little bit more, but I'm personally not big on it because of that. I think in prior generations when stat creep wasn't so heavy, I would say Spiritomb is a little bit better. Or maybe in low tier. I think I had it in low tier. Yeah, I liked it in low tier. Next up, we have Seth here saying, I would say that it would have to be Sawsbuck. Interesting. It's a low tier Pokemon that has a great dual stab. And it's a glass cannon with a decent move pool that can break under the right circumstances with the right team behind it. Get hazards up and Serene Grace, beat your opponents up. Yeah, I don't know about the great dual stab. It's actually a really terrible dual stab. I think like the other things are valid. It's fast, chlorophyll, you can Serene Grace headbutt, I suppose, but I don't think that makes a Pokemon good. I actually think Sawsbuck is borderline unusable, and normal grass is not helping it out. I think like Terra with chlorophyll is an interesting idea in really low tier Terra if you can still draft Auto Sun in some ways, but yeah, otherwise, not too big on it. Next up here, we have Radioactive Mayo. Says, I feel like this question comes down to personal preference and what people have used previously with success. I mean, yeah. I personally use like Whimsicott as a nice budget fairy type. Grass and Fairy is a good defensive typing. Useful speed tail and pranks your utility and your turns always provide value. Yeah, I love Whimsicott for like the anti-Mickey fashion of like being able to prank your encore things. I think the ability to encore things in a fast manner is really, really clutch, and it really, really warps the way your opponent plays. I was watching an L5 stream recently where he was like, there was a couple teams that had Whimsicott on it in like 8 Mon Gen 9, which I didn't expect, but it was putting in work, so I'm here for it. Next up, we have Haggus here, saying Bruxish with strong jaw has an effective attack stat of 182. Psychic Fangs is stronger than Mega Mewtwo X and Headbutt. Not even exaggerating here. I'm not surprised. And that is how multipliers work. Defensive Dazzling Blush is a Palafin check. Shout out to Keegan. No shoutouts to Keegan. Not on this channel. Is also really cool. Very cool low tier mon, underutilized. Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of cool. I think Flip Turn is also a cool aspect of it. I think it's really hard to bring. I think the niche Palafin checking is pretty cool. Like the combination of like Flip Turn, Super Fang, Rocky Helmet, Dazzling. Pretty cool stuff. Even like Dazzling doesn't really matter because it's gonna be faster than you anyways, but we got this. I'm here for it. I like Bruxish. I think it's definitely a mon that isn't super explored. Next up, we have Zethor here saying Drogalgy. The mon is a fiend. It's got unreal strength with specs and shockingly good bulk. It covers useful nature of being a grounded poison and has great utility with things like T-spikes and can work balls with slow pivot. It just has it all. Yeah, I mean, Drogalgy's always been great, right? The dragon poison typing is really strong. It's really only steel types that switch into you, but that's fine because we can throw off adaptability, specs, Dracos, and still chunk most steel types. We also have Focus Less as a coverage option, but in all honesty, in most instances, you don't need it. Having a Pokemon that can just reliably always throw off Dracos, even if it's into a steel type resist, is so good, and that's why that secondary poison typing is great. And also Dragon Poison got a lot of good resistances defensively too, so yeah. Next up, we have JMG here saying Johtoian Sneasel. I cannot lie to you, when I first just looked at that, I thought that it said Jonathan Sneasel. Can I get some Jonathan Sneasels in the comments below? We love Jonathan Sneasel. Obviously, power level is low, but Stab to Black and Knock are so good, especially for being in price at like 2 to 3 points. Yeah, if you're finding it 2 to 3, I think that's valid, considering the speed tier, Knock, Axel. I see Weavile or Sneasel super overpriced. I think people still see Weavile as a low tier. It wasn't like Gen 7, Gen 6, where it actually put considerable damage on things, again, due to stat creep and things like that. At least put more. I don't think it's very good now, but if it's 2 to 3 points, hell yeah, brother. That's a great price. I'm here for it. Next up, we have Jeppe here saying Oricorio broken. In low tier, but if I had to say a mon I've gotten to draft a lot in different formats and still competing at high levels is Go-Goat. Is him, I can assure you. I might have just totally read that wrong. But Oricorio, fun mon, low tier Terra, right? Especially with Revelation Dance and how that works. And then we also have what do you call it? Go-Go, which is another mon in low tier Terra I've seen you do really well. I think it was Tone recently used it really well in UMPL with Terra and got a couple of fun little bulk up tweaks. It can even Trailblaze now, which is pretty cool. Next up, we have Wolves Nation or Beast Name are here saying the Dunsparce. It's a great secondary Terra Captain, and its stats and move pool are cracked. It can be a win con, a wall, or anything in between. It's a great... It and Terrabolt carried me all the way to top 16 in Summer Seasonal. Big stuff. Congrats on top 16 Summer Seasonal. That is much farther than I made it. But yeah, I've always been here for the Dunsparce. I haven't drafted it in like a year now, but there was a point where almost every team I had a Dunsparce on it to rock up, to glare things, to Calm Mind Sweep, to Coil Sweep, to be an awesome low tier Terra Captain as well. So I'm here for it. I loved the Dunsparce when I had it. Next up, we have Eden here saying, or Identical here saying, Poltergeist. People think of it as Shell Smash one-trick pony, but it has crazy special bulk and the ability to just neuter physical attackers with low plus strength stab while still being able to hit pretty hard in the process. Yeah, I think the issue though is like, if you're drafting it to be a defensive ghost, it's a defensive ghost that's pretty mediocre at that. It has the Shell Smash option, but like we've kind of talked about in the podcast recently, Shell Smash should be like a move you never bring in Generation 9. Very seldom should you be bringing it, just because if your opponent calls you on that, switches into a Pokemon that outspeeds and kills you and mirror herbs you, you lose the game. Shell Smash is a lose con, and I personally don't think it is ever worth bringing in Gen 9 Draft League. In Standard, different. People aren't prepping for you. But in Draft League in particular, getting mirror herbed and losing the game, not a good idea. So I wouldn't draft a Pokemon that's biggest strength is the Shell Smash one-trick pony. It can do the other things, sure, but very mediocrely, and we can get things cheaper or around at the same price that do that defensive ghost role much better. Next up, we have Didi here saying, Lickitongue is one of the highest utility low-tier mons I often see, very undervalued in leagues. It's pretty much more every move Licky runs, and if you have a good knockoff switch in, and know of your Eviolite mons, it can offer you 90% of the utility for 20% of the price. That's fair. I just hate relying on these Eviolite guys to be like the centerpiece of my defensive team, considering how widespread knockoff is. I'm going to disagree. I'm a big Licky guy in Gen 8. I don't know how it would play in Gen 9 or in Nat decks, being how offensive the format is now. I imagine Nat decks would still be pretty good, because it can still like Toxic and Wish and Heal Bell and all that stuff, but yeah. Next up we have Sven saying, Sfeel. It's so good that they had to take it out of the game. Any low tier poison is usually good for its points, but I feel like the low tier water and poisons are usually better than most other low tiers and what they actually bring to the table. Only problem that one of them is for... I usually want a stronger option. They're usually pretty pissed. Okay, so he was talking... Okay, I was so confused for a second, but I understand now. He was making a joke about Sfeel, and then he was just saying that low tier water and poisons are usually better than the other low tiers, which I think is definitely fair, right? Especially if we need that utility option or that roll compression as a low tier mon. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, I was so confused for a second. I was like, what's happening? Sfeel isn't a poison type, at least to my knowledge. My bag might be too little. Next up, we have Burnie here saying Gen 7 Bouffalon, the GOAT. I've seen a lot of Gen 6 Bouffalon. Maybe not a lot of Gen 7, but I've seen a lot of Gen 6 Bouffalon, and it's always performed really well. I used Bouffalon in Gen 7 in GG Inc., and in my first game, it was a great Kyurem check, and it put a ton of damage while being a really strong Assault Vest user. I've also seen it like put mons like Serp in jail, put a lot of balanced builds too in Generation 6 in jail, so yeah, I'm here for Boof. Boof is the GOAT in old gens. Next up, we have Super Dolphin here saying Wo-Chan as a Terra Captain, that one can be unbreakable. I agree to an extent. I think if your opponent preps really bad. Without reliable recovery, not even getting the option to synth is pretty tough to me, honestly, but a good defensive utility, great ability with Terra as well. Next up, we have Myotic. I loved using Myotic recently. I'm gonna read this and then I'll move it back down. I'll move to the next picture. This is from Wicket02. I love using Myotic recently. Obviously fills the bowl with bulky water, but I feel like it does very well, especially for where it's usually underpriced. Marvel skill lets it take on physical threats, and of course it's just naturally taking on special threats with just its def. Luring Voice has some very nice coverage, which also dissuades setup alongside Dragon Tail. Recover lets it sit around, flip turn on a bulky mon is never a bad thing, and Coil Hypnosis is always a headache to play against. It also kept Scald this gen. Only thing I was wishing it got was Calm Mind / Nasty Plot, but I feel like that would push it up in price further than just the 10 to 12 points I see it at. TLDR, it fills the role of a bulky water really well. And then we have like Flame Orb taking not... Okay, this example kind of drives me crazy though. I understand +6 Galarian Darmanitan only does 42% with Ice Punch. That's a burned Milotic with Marvel Skin, still almost doing half. That's not good to me. I think Flame Orb Myotic is the biggest trap that newer Draft League players fall into. I think it is a terrible set. Very often, if you actually look at the calcs, you are just taking about the same damage when you're conjunction in hazards especially, but even just burn damage in a lot. You're putting yourself in a position that you're always recovering. Recover, or you're forced into a 2-hit KO position or to die. Right? Then we're not performing the role we do. I actually love Boots Milo. I like it when it turns around, things like that, and I like when it uses the special wall that it's supposed to. When people try to stretch Milotic too thin to check everything, that's when it checks nothing. So I don't agree with the reasoning. I do agree that Milo is a good water type. I don't agree with this, like, you know, Flame Orb shenanigans, Marvel scale, things like that. You can go Marvel scale, it'd be good, but I don't think Flame Orb is ever a good idea. Personally. Alright? Not ever. In most instances is what I'm going to say. Next up we have Sandy Simmons here saying, I'm not in the too know about this one draft, but I don't feel like I see many people talking about it. Tingon is an excellent Pokemon this gen. I feel like apart from the big hammer move, no one really talks about how useful it can be in a lot of draft formats. One of my favorite monsters to use this gen, and I feel like it's talked about as how can I make this broken, not how good this mon can be in draft when played right. And by making it broken, I mean buffing it, of course. I mean, yeah, that's fair. I think Lickitongue's a good utility fairy / steal. Knock, Encore, T-Wave, good rocker. Yeah, I think if you use it in the way that you're supposed to use it and you don't try and force it to be offensive because of big hammer move, you'll have some success with it. And then, to end it off, the GOAT, the thumbnail of this video, Mnaz Bellybolt. Best low-tier demon. As a believer, day one is slowly getting the recognition it deserves. Any other Bellybolt truthers? Oh, there we go. We have Biff the Banana making a return, same belief in him. I love low-tier Terra Bellybolt. I mean, we just saw it make finals in Summer Seasonal, which is pretty funny, but as the round one pick, which I know was a bit, obviously it wasn't worth that pick, but hey, winners win, baby. You know, actually it won Summer Seasonal technically, I think. That was a pretty funny game. If you want to see us talk about that, go watch the podcast episode that went up yesterday. But yeah, I love low tier Terra Bellybolt. Again, same thing. High tier broken offensive Terra, low tier versatile defensive Terra. That's Bellybolt. Electromorphosis can be annoying to switch into, take a hit, volt switch out, blah, blah, blah. And then just static. You get Slack Off, you get Toxic, you get Muddy Water, you get Electric, and then you get, like, you know, a Terra Blast if you need it, like a Terra Blast Fairy or something like that. So I'm definitely here for it. Love me some Bellybolt, and that's why he got the thumbnail. Let me know what you guys think of the Pokemon mentioned today. Is there any that you think were missed? Any that you agree, disagree? Please let me know in the comments. That being said, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like. If you're new here, drop a sub. I'll see y'all next time. Later.